The honeymoon phase is officially over for the Indiana Fever. The hype videos are no longer enough. The preseason promises are starting to sound hollow. And after another painful collapse under the bright lights, the entire basketball world is beginning to ask a terrifying question. Is this roster actually built to help Caitlin Clark win, or is she being set up to fail in real time? Because what we just witnessed against the Washington Mystics was not simply a bad shooting night. It was not one unlucky game. It was a full-scale exposure of every structural weakness that fans have been warning about for weeks. The offense looked disorganized. The defense looked exhausted. The bench looked overwhelmed. And through all of it, Caitlin Clark was once again forced to drag this team back from the edge almost entirely by herself. The final score only tells part of the story. Yes, the Fever fought. Yes, they made another dramatic late push. But the deeper issue is far more disturbing. This team keeps falling into massive holes before Clark has to transform into a one-woman rescue mission just to keep them alive. That is not sustainable basketball. That is survival mode. And survival mode is not how championship teams operate. For most of the night, the Fever offense looked completely broken. The spacing was cramped. The ball movement stalled. Players hesitated on open looks. Washington's defense swarmed every pick-and-roll action and dared Indiana's secondary pieces to beat them. They couldn't. The Mystics executed their scouting report perfectly, collapsing into the paint and forcing the Fever into uncomfortable half-court possessions. Bullets forever won. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark was being trapped, bumped, pressured, and chased across the floor possession after possession. And yet, despite struggling early, despite starting cold from the field, despite taking constant physical punishment, she still found a way to completely hijack the fourth quarter and nearly steal the game. That is what makes this situation so emotionally exhausting for fans. Every single night feels like Clark has to perform basketball miracles just to give this team a chance. And the numbers back it up. The Fever have now scored over 100 points multiple times already this season and still found ways to lose because the defense continues collapsing at critical moments. SB Nation, too, the offensive firepower exists. The star power exists. But the structure around those stars is showing massive cracks. Let's talk about the biggest issue that everyone watching can now clearly see. The front court. Again, the Washington Mystics attacked Indiana's interior defense all night long. They got whatever they want around the rim. They bullied the Fever in transition. They generated second-chance opportunities. They forced switches and hunted mismatches. And once Aliyah Boston went down with another lower leg issue late in the game, the entire defensive structure started shaking. That injury update felt like a punch directly to the stomach of the Fever fan base. Because now the fear is becoming impossible to ignore. This roster depends on Boston and Clark to carry an unsustainable burden every single night. And when one of them is compromised physically, the entire system starts wobbling. Fans already spent all of last season watching Clark battle through constant injuries and physical wear. Reports throughout 2025 repeatedly mention quad problems, groin issues, ankle setbacks, and ongoing recovery concerns. Reddit 3. So when viewers hear words like lower leg injury connected to Boston while Clark is also dealing with constant physical pressure, panic naturally spreads across the fan base. And honestly, it's understandable, because this team plays like it has absolutely zero margin for error. The moment Boston sits, the rebounding suffers. The paint defense weakens. The physicality disappears. Opponents instantly attack downhill. And then Clark has to start creating offense at an impossible pace just to compensate for everything collapsing around her. That fourth quarter comeback was both inspiring and deeply alarming at the same time. Inspiring because Clark once again showed why she is one of the most electrifying players in basketball. The crowd exploded every time she crossed half court. Every pull-up three felt like a lightning strike. Every transition push completely changed the energy inside the arena. She dragged Indiana back into the game almost single-handedly. SB Nation, too. But it was alarming because the Fever needed superhero basketball just to erase problems they created themselves earlier in the game. Championship teams do not repeatedly need miracle comebacks. Championship teams impose structure from the opening tip. And that leads directly to the growing pressure surrounding Stephanie White. The criticism is no longer coming only from emotional fans online. Analysts are starting to notice the same patterns. The defensive communication breaks down too often. Rotations arrive late. Transition defense disappears for long stretches. Offensive rhythm becomes stagnant for entire quarters before Clark improvises her way into saving possessions. There are moments where the Fever genuinely look like two completely different basketball teams depending on whether Clark is improvising magic or not. That is not supposed to happen with a roster this talented. And here is the terrifying part for Indiana. The rest of the league is starting to recognize it too. Washington clearly entered this game with a focused defensive blueprint. They pressured the perimeter. They clogged driving lanes. They forced Indiana into uncomfortable mid-range looks. They dared role players to consistently make shots. And for long stretches, it worked perfectly. The Fever shot poorly inside the arc, struggled to finish through contact, and looked completely disconnected offensively for multiple stretches of the game. Bullets forever, 1. Meanwhile, Washington's young core played with confidence, pace, and physicality. The Mystics looked organized. They looked prepared. They looked disciplined. And perhaps most importantly, they looked like a team that understood exactly who they are. Can the same thing honestly be said about Indiana right now? Because what exactly is the Fever identity at this point? Are they a fast-paced transition offense? Are they a pick-and-roll heavy attack built around Clark and Boston? Are they a perimeter shooting team? Are they trying to be defensive grinders? The answer changes quarter to quarter, sometimes possession to possession. That inconsistency is driving fans insane. And social media absolutely exploded during this game because viewers are beginning to realize something uncomfortable. Caitlin Clark is covering up a massive amount of structural problems with pure talent and competitive fire. When she gets hot, the Fever suddenly look dangerous. When she cools off, the entire offense can fall apart. That dependency level is terrifying for a franchise trying to build a championship contender around a generational superstar. Especially when Clark is playing with the kind of relentless intensity that eventually wears players down physically. People forget something important about her style of basketball. This is not a slow-paced, low-energy superstar. Clark plays at hyperspeed mentally and physically. She pushes transition constantly. She attacks defensive gaps instantly. She throws aggressive passing angles that require teammates to react immediately. She stretches defenses far beyond normal range. And she plays with non-stop emotional intensity. That style creates enormous pressure on opposing defenses. But it also creates enormous pressure on teammates to keep up mentally and physically. When the supporting cast hesitates for even 1 second, entire possessions collapse. And fans can see the frustration building sometimes. Not through dramatic gestures, not through public criticism, but through body language, through timing issues, through broken spacing, through possessions where Clark makes the correct read and nobody finishes the play. Basketball at that speed requires complete trust and synchronization. Right now, Indiana does not consistently have that. And the scary part is the season is still young. That means these chemistry problems are either going to improve dramatically or completely spiral out of control under increasing pressure. Because expectations around this franchise are unlike anything the WNBA has ever experienced before. Clark changed everything for the league the moment she arrived. Attendance exploded. Television ratings surged. Road arenas sold out. National attention skyrocketed. Wikipedia 4. This is no longer a rebuilding project quietly developing in the background. This is the center of the basketball universe every single night, which means every weakness gets magnified. Every rotation decision gets analyzed. Every defensive breakdown gets clipped online. Every injury concern creates panic. And every loss feels 10 times larger than normal. The Fever are no longer operating under normal pressure. They are operating inside a 24-hour sports microscope. That is why fans are reacting so emotionally. They know how rare players like Caitlin Clark truly are. You do not get many opportunities to build around a generational talent capable of changing an entire sport. And supporters are terrified that organizational mistakes, roster imbalance, and inconsistent coaching are wasting precious years before the championship window fully opens. Sly carrying the expectations of an entire league. Even now, despite all the frustration, Clark continues delivering historic-level moments. Her late-game takeover against Washington reminded everyone exactly why arenas erupt every time she touches the ball. SB Nation 2. One deep three changes the atmosphere instantly. One transition pull-up ignites the crowd. One no-look pass completely shifts momentum. She is basketball electricity. But electricity alone does not build championship culture. Structure does. Discipline does. Depth does. Defense does. And right now, Indiana still looks like a team trying to figure out who they are while simultaneous. That is an incredibly dangerous combination, especially because the schedule is not slowing down. Opponents are coming for Clark every single night now, with aggressive defensive schemes specifically designed to wear her down.